on staff at Woodland Hills, and Resanate, which is the hosting ministry for this event, that's what I spend most of my time doing. And so Resonate's about 5 years old, and if you're 18 to 24 and you don't know about it yet, please stop in the back afterwards and we'd be happy to tell you. But this is really a new effort this year to try to broaden the conversation outside of Resanate within Woodland Hills, including we have some high school students here today, which we're very glad to have you guys. We also have people in their upper 20s, and yeah, you're all here because you have some connection to the questions of, what am I going to do with my life? How do I know what I'm gifted in? What is God calling me to? Maybe you've already made those decisions and you're in work, but the questions about how do I integrate the kingdom into my work when it's maybe not considered full-time ministry in a traditional sense, about working at a church or cross-cultural ministry work, things like that. So the purpose of this today is to have these lovely people who we feel like really do this very well. That whole, what does it mean to give God everything, including my work? And so our hope today is that you guys would get a sense of how some of them have answered some of those questions and are answering some of those questions. And then you guys will get a chance to ask your own too. So I'm going to read just a brief quote. Parker Palmer, on the back of your handout actually is some suggested reading. One of those books is the one I have up here. He's just done a lot of, I think he's in his 70s or 80s, and he's just done a lot of great work around this question of vocation. And one of the things he says in this book is this: vocation does not come from willfulness, it comes from listening. I must listen to my life and try to understand what it is truly about, quite apart from what I would like it to be about. Or my life will never represent anything real in the world, no matter how earnest my intentions. And then Frederick Buechner is another theologian that says, vocation is where our deepest gladness meets the world's deepest need. So where can those things come together? How can we really see work and what we spend a lot of our time doing as this life-giving thing that really is in partnership with God? So you all had a couple things on your seat when you came in. One is a really cool-looking bluish design of, that's the bios for all the panelists. So we're actually, just because there's so many of them and we want to really maximize the time, we're not going to take time at the beginning for introductions. That's why we have that there in front of you. Notice they all included their personal email. And that is an extension of, really an extension for you guys, that if there are things that come up after this conversation today that you'd like to know more about, they've included that so that you can email them directly, which is really gracious. Thank you all for doing that. So we hope to get a lot of your questions answered today, but if not, you can contact them and then you can read a little bit more about them in the bio. We'll take about the first 25 minutes for them to answer some questions that I sent them ahead of time. And then the second thing on your chair was a little sheet of white paper that is for you to submit questions. If you don't have a writing utensil, Johannes has some in the back. And we would really encourage you throughout their presentations to ask questions of the group or of them as individuals. And then we'll spend the last about half of the time hearing from you guys about those questions. Sound good? Okay, so I have them seated in alphabetical order, which is how they are on your sheet, and so there's nothing real scientific about that. But the first question, and this will help you, besides what you have in front of you, give a sense of who they are. The first question is to share how you chose your career and your favorite part of your job. And we'll start with Doug and just move down the line.
Well, I started out as a mechanic. That career I kind of chose because I was extremely mechanically inclined, trying to work myself through school, working at mechanic shops, and eventually a light bulb went on. Maybe I should go to school to be a mechanic. So I actually did that, and for 8 years was a mechanic. So as I was a mechanic, I had a friend going through law enforcement school, and I started to sit down and talk with him, and every time I talked to him, I was just so excited. I heard the responsibilities he had. I heard about him going into people's, learning how to go into people's homes, seeing them at their, darkest moment in life and trying to help them through those situations. And I just had this strong pull and desire that I wanted to be the person to be put in those hard places and just bring Christ into their situation everywhere I went. So as almost a couple meetings into with my friend, my wife came and said, hey, I'll support you with whatever you want. And within a week, I was in school, going back to school, working full-time, school full-time to be a police officer. So What was my favorite thing?
Your favorite part of your job?
Well, I kind of mentioned it too. The favorite part of my job, I patrolled the streets for about 7 years before I went into forensics. But to be able to go into people's homes when they're at their, when no one else is allowed to see them at their lowest level, to help them through their times, it's a huge, I don't know if it's a gift or it's just a special place to be, that you can be a light to them that no one else is able to. So it's just a privilege to be at that moment in time in people's lives. Horrific sometimes and hurtful sometimes, but it's just such a responsibility and gift to be able to be a part of that and help them. It's one of my favorites.
Thanks. Emily?
Yeah, so I'm a high school teacher. I teach math and theater, and I did not plan originally to do that. I went to college for theater. I was interested in youth development through arts. And then after college, I served a year of AmeriCorps in an alternative school where I realized that creativity was needed across the board, and maybe especially in potentially scary subjects like math. And so kind of brought, I try to bring joy and creativity to my math class, and by far my favorite part is just working with students and getting to know them and getting to kind of meet them where they're at and help them become their best selves and just get to form relationships with them. I think of math as kind of my means to an end. I'm not a crazy math person, I'm a people person, I'm a young people person, and that's really what I see I get to do every day, teaching math, but really getting to develop it.
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm a salesman. I have a marketing company. We serve local merchants with repeat visit offers, so sort of Groupon on steroids, primarily using good steroids, primarily using your smartphone to present whatever you're redeeming from that local merchant. How did I get into it? I stumbled into it. So went to school for theology at North Central University and stumbled across 1 Corinthians 9, which Paul says is the rights of an apostle. And I realized I wasn't going to be in vocational ministry. So I started to resonate with, like your word, finding a place to minister in the workplace and using that as a tool to serve Christ. And so I stumbled into sales. I was selling insurance and sucking at it, really sucking at it. I didn't know anybody who wanted life insurance. I was like early 20s. And so my friend said, you should come out and sell with my company. And so I did, went out and sold with this company, knocking on people's doors. It's one of those people that would knock on your door. And I realized I'm really good at it. And I realized that being off the beaten path, doing something that you wouldn't expect someone to want to do, is actually really fulfilling. It's an opportunity to meet people in a special way and find out about people, discover what motivates people, what drives them, that sort of thing. So that's really been sort of the most fulfilling thing about at least the sales part of our business, is I get a chance to really kind of pinpoint what is it that motivates people, what makes them say yes or no, and to want to kind of come alongside of that and partner with that to empower them to make a good decision, or to help them to make a decision that's not a yes, that also is a form of empowerment. So it's a lot of things.
Before we move on, I'll just say I'm not a math person either. So on your bio, it says that Josh has been in marketing for 27 years, which means he must have started at about 5. So that's my fault. Sorry about that. All right, Julie.
Hi, my name's Julie, and I have been playing music my whole life, but decided to make it a profession or full-time, I suppose, about 3.5 years ago. I was working in a university in an office, and that was a fine job. I was doing well in it, but my husband at the time, well, he's still my husband. He was in another musical project and just totally rocking at it, and I was resentful all the time. I didn't have the energy when I got home from work to do anything creative. And it started eating away at me and him and our marriage, and finally, I guess the way I got into it was he was like, why don't we just do this together? And I said, why not? And God really put things into place so that it made sense, because I'm a very I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't made sense. I'm not that type of risk taker. And so we just did it, and we're still doing it. The most fun, I would have to say, I would lie if I said it was not performing. Performing is probably my favorite part of being a musician, but I also really like building something with my husband, writing together. We have a very unique way of writing that is collaborative. So being in a collaboration that's so invigorating, that's also very fun.
I am Miguel Ruiz. I'm a physician working at Regions. I do internal medicine and also palliative care. And don't know really if I chose a career in medicine or perhaps medicine chose me to be a part of it. And what I say that I want to say is that obviously I was a teenager looking for what to do, and I remember studying with my friends and seeing my brother on the other side with skulls and femurs and all kinds of bones because he was a medical student. And I liked science, and when I saw him what he was doing, I thought that's intriguing, that's interesting. And I think that was kind of a little bit of what triggered medicine for me, but I think really what we do as careers has a lot to do with what our composition of giftings, abilities, temperament, personality, circumstances, deeper passions, all collide into a situation in which perhaps the police body needs you. You are the right fit for that need in society. So I think that's kind of a little bit of what it was like for me. What I like about medicine, I think, has changed a lot through the years. I initially really liked the science, getting to the right diagnosis or treating somebody was critically ill. The pathophysiology is amazing, it's exciting. But really, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to enjoy more of what opportunities for connecting with people. Sometimes, as Doug was also saying, people who are in the middle of a crisis, on an unexpected diagnosis of cancer, people who are facing death. As I had a patient this week of 39-year-old involved in a motor vehicle accident. Those intense moments in people's life in which you are given the privilege to be a part of and the responsibility, that is to me the most fulfilling part of this.
Great.
Cool. I'm Rick. I'm a patent attorney with Medtronic, and patents are working with inventions and things like that. Just to break it down, I don't know if I happened in my career or my career happened to me, but when I was in high school, I was good at science and math, but I came from a family that nobody had gone to college, and so I didn't know what to do, and so I did what I wanted to see the world, so I joined the Army. And maybe now with my kingdom and pacifist view of things, that might be a different decision, but as an 18-year-old, that seemed to make sense, and so I went and I lived in Germany for a few years, and just enjoyed that, but I knew the Army wasn't something that I wanted to do. I learned a lot of things, and I learned that I really don't like somebody telling me what to do all the time. So I matured a little, and when I was done, I knew I was good at math and science, and I still had kind of a passion for that. And so I looked into engineering, and I looked into physics. They both seemed very interesting to me. And as I looked at the physicists I knew, my grandfather was one versus the engineers I knew. The engineers were, at least in my view, a little more cooler, kind of played softball after work. The physicists were the guys who walked into the door because they forgot to hold instead of push. I went towards the engineering. So I did that for a number of years, and I enjoyed it. And I worked with a lot of talented people. I worked at 3M, and I realized I was good at it, but I wasn't passionate about it. There were some things I saw with working with some of the lawyers who worked on the patents that I thought were pretty cool, and they all seemed to really like their jobs. And so I left my job as an engineer at the age of 30 and went back to law school and spent 3 years there, and I came out and I practiced law since then. I worked at a firm, and then I went back to 3M. And actually the way it worked out is I wanted to work at Medtronic, but they said, well, you don't have enough of the kinds of experiences that we would like because we don't train people. So here's some places that train people and give you good experiences. So I did the firm, and then I did 3M and had some really good experiences there. And I kept calling the guy who finally hired me, like every year, hey, you have an opening for me, you have an opening. Finally, I think he hired me just because he wanted me to stop bugging him, which has been good. And my favorite parts of my job, two things. One is just kind of a fun, probably more of a selfish thing. I get to go to Europe quite a bit for my work, and that's always fun. And I always try and take somebody in the family with me, and so that's fun. I'm usually over there a week or two at a time. The other thing I really like about working at Medtronic is when I see our therapies, and especially the division I work for, we make stimulators that stimulate the spine or the brain, or they put drug pumps so they treat pain, they treat Parkinson's, and to see the difference in a patient's life that when the products that our company puts out and then they put them in a person, their life changes. They have these life-changing illnesses, and they go back from having no life and a lot of times being suicidal to wanting to live and having a life back.
Awesome, that's great. In any order, whoever wants to answer first, but we'd like to hear from everybody. And this is a two-part question. What are, is there a specific way you can share that you integrate your faith into your work? And then what is the challenge in that integration? And whoever wants to start.
I can begin. My work is, when I was on patrol, I really dealt with the ground level grunge that society can produce. So it was very easy for me to, and I did it often, I'd always pray for people in my backseat. If we're on the road to detox, and if they're kind of out of control or just screaming, I asked if they wanted me to pray for them. Instantly, I could pray for them. They love that. So at their lowest level, intoxicated or whatever, people always in that level are acceptance of prayer. And that was just a fun moment. And really, for me to bring my faith to work, that was the number one way. Second is kind of the relationships you build anywhere in life. That's kind of general at work, home, or in recreation. And right now, in forensics, I have a couple believers in my office as well, which is unique. And we'll actually go to, I respond to homicide scenes, officer-involved shootings. We'll actually pray for the event before we go into the room. We will maybe step off the side, do it ourselves or something. Because we really believe we're entering into a situation where something extremely evil just happened that we see, and then we just kind of protect ourselves and pray over it internally or sometimes out loud amongst ourselves.
Is there a specific challenge in that?
Well, with police officers, there is challenges. Always usually peer pressure challenge. You know, what are my peers going to think? Do I not say anything? It's usually I won't say anything because you have some outside pressures of supervisors here. Not that they would really care. They can't really, in my position, do anything to me. I don't think we have any rules against praying for people at work like some companies do, but it's mostly just that peer pressure that it's hard for that to ever go away sometimes. So you just have to really be bold and protect yourself, you know, with prayer yourself, and just put on that shield, Lord, you know, where arrows of any kind can come at you, if it's peer pressure, if it's job-related things. Like if you have a good shield of, you know, of salvation or faith. What's the shield? Salvation.
Helmet of salvation. Shield of faith.
Shield of faith,
Right?
I thought. You really
That was a pop quiz. I was not prepared.
that shield and to help stop those things coming at you, because they will come at you, and they can look at you and say, you know, it's not like him. It's look at his whole history here, and that's what happens with some internal affairs complaints I've got. They look at me and it's like, no, this guy, it's not him. That's not who he is. It's just one of those arrows coming at us. So. Yeah.
I think there's been a kind of an artificial separation between a job and a vocation. And that's something that there's some professions perhaps a little more obvious that your job can be your ministry. We use that terminology. But I think that's still a construct. Any profession really is your ministry, I hope. And if it isn't, really, you probably are not in the right spot. Because I don't think for the Jews there was a concept of things that are spiritual, things that are not spiritual. Everything we do is spiritual. And for me, I tell you, I feel God's presence in the church, but I feel it equally, if not more, in the hospital. So I think, to me, sometimes it requires a little bit of, because I would do medical missions in the summertime, and I'd go to Honduras, and I think, wow, now I'm doing ministry, and that was earlier in my career, in which it was wrong. Ministry was tomorrow morning when I'm here reading, so I'm at the clinic, whatever I am. Really, this is the place where God's called me to be who I am, and to try to do the best that He's gifted me with for people who are around me. And that can be medicine, it can be engineering, it can be law, in whatever area. So one thing that helped me in the day-to-day is before I enter the room, and I don't do it every single time, but I should, and I keep catch myself wanting to do it, is asking the question to myself, what's God doing in the life of this person now? It's so easy to be judgmental, walking into the room of this alcoholic, he's not bad with decompensated liver failure because he went back to drinking. Or you go to an ICU of any hospital here in town, and 80% of what you see is self-abuse. From the Tylenol overdose to the smoking that led to emphysema, lung cancer, and the list goes on. So really to be on the mind frame of what is God actually doing in the life of this person. And not to think that you're going to be the major contributor of that, but you may have yet another little element in that big thing of God dealing with that person.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually come from a family of pastors. I'm the only one between my brother and my parents that isn't ordained. So it's easy to think that because I'm not actually speaking about God every day in the public school, perhaps it's not ministry, but I completely agree that the ministry is what you're doing between people, and even if they don't know what's motivating you, you know, and you can still show God's love. So I teach freshmen primarily, so they're 14 and 15, and maybe some of you are not that far from that age, but sometimes they're a little hard to love, to be completely honest. Right? But so same kind of thing every day, thinking about them as precious people who need God's love, and how can I show God's love and affirm their worth as people, and that is ministry, showing that love, and thinking about what's going on in their day before they come to you. And the boy on Friday who went to the bathroom and left his shoes in the room, and he comes back and the whole room smells like feet, and 14-year-old boy feet on top of it. But you don't know what's going on in his day, and to respond to him with love rather than with shame, I think that is showing God's love, and I think that is ministry. And he may not know why. While holding my nose, I'm affirming him, but I know that it's because it's our job to show love as the sun shines, right? And so I have a really great chance to do that every day with kids. And then the challenge, I think it's just when you come in with your own stuff that makes it hard to get past. You come in after a short night of sleep or something going on in your own life, and it's hard sometimes to get over yourself to show that love, and your patience can be shorter. But it's important to stay focused on that. The book The Help in the movie, I guess, has the quote that the nanny says to the little girl. She says, "You is kind, you is smart, you is important." And I think that's God's love, and I think it's a message I can give to my kiddos. Stinky feet, no. So. Yeah.
Lynn, for me, the backbone that sort of everything work-related rests upon is something Jesus says in John 6. I was going to look for it quick. I can just say it. But it says, "Do not work for food that perishes, but work for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has set his seal of approval." See, I think on one hand you have this reality that we're trying to be practical, we're trying to look at what our giftings are, what our strengths are, we're passionate about this mix that was shared just a second ago. But on the other hand, there's this reality, there's this deep communion that the Spirit of God, via Jesus, is prepared to give to each of you, to give to us, each one if we're willing to take it. There's this opportunity placed right before us that is work that endures to eternal life. We can have that work, right? And now, if you're anything like me, you choose work that is going to perish. You're just honest. You're choosing it. And the more that we are taking up the responsibility of listening and asking for Jesus, what do you want to do in this person's life? What is the opportunity that you are placing before me that is a challenge for me to respond like you, to be you, to this person, or to these people? So it's really, and the more that you place this practical element alongside of or with this crazy thing, God's Spirit speaking to you, to challenge me, to challenge us to do something that's radical and countercultural, you put those two things together, it gets pretty crazy. So for me, in my work, I have the privilege of constantly being affirmed by others. Go away. Right? Does anybody feel that about salespeople? You don't have to raise your hand. Right? And oftentimes, salespeople get a bad rap because they try to get someone to do something that they don't want to do. So I'll cover that more in a later question that we're going to answer. But looking briefly at it from a standpoint as being a salesperson, we have many interests in sales. We're a weird breed, but one of the things that we get an opportunity for, I'm answering the question now, is the opportunity to believe and treat someone regardless, like Jesus, regardless of how they're treating you, right? It's one thing if you have a belief that you love God, that you love Jesus, you love what he's doing in your life, but until that is tested, there's a difference between those two realities. There's this objective reality that Jesus is for you, but then there's this tested reality, right? And right, in James it says that your faith need be made complete, right? So there's a faith, but then there's a works that must come about to complete your faith. And so in this case here, at sales, I have the opportunity constantly to love unlovable people. Jesus said, whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me, right? So every time I face a difficult situation, every time I face a person who is behaving really poorly towards me or towards my salespeople, it's an opportunity. It's a chance for me to be something different, to behave differently, to love people who are unlovable behaving. Easy, right? Jesus said it's easy to love someone who loves you, right? What credit is that? Right? It's a whole different thing when you get to love unlovable people. And so that's, I think, the privilege for me and the challenge that is presented 1,000 times a day almost, it seems. So. Sorry for going so long.
That's okay. Julie, Rick, what would you either one of you want to take?
I'll go. So how do I integrate my faith into my work? One of the things I do every day when I wake up is I spend time to pray and really anchor my identity in Christ. And I can tell you from living a long life of not being anchored there, that there are so many things that can distract you from that. So that's the first thing that I do. And then what I do that because I work in we've got a good diversity of settings as well as professions here. So I work in a large multinational, multicultural, private corporation. And so praying, we can do that within maybe small Christian groups, but we can't proselytize. There are rules against that. We don't have First Amendment protections and such. So what I do is I take that identity and I use kingdom principles and relational peacemaking principles to be in a relationship with people there. And I invite them to get to know me. And what I find is after I am in a relationship with people for a while, if they see something that's interesting, like, oh, I noticed that you are always peaceful, you never rebuke someone, you never shame someone, and there's lots of dysfunction in big corporations. It's like a big family with lots of lots of dysfunction. And so I have people that will approach me later and say, I noticed this, and so it gives me a chance where I can actually enter into a conversation to share. I start usually sharing kingdom messages, again, because I'm trying to get, not scare somebody away, but also I'm trying to draw them in. And then I can share Jesus with them and talk about how Jesus made a difference in my life. But I have to be anchored in the culture first somewhat and know the culture and how to proceed it. So we just walked up to it and said, hey, how are you and Jesus doing today? And in that kind of setting where I work, it wouldn't be received very well. So one of the challenges that I have, I would say, it would be kind of doing it subversively. So I can do it, I can be who I am in the open, and I'm happy to answer questions when people ask them. But and the other piece is sometimes I have to, it falls flat. You just have to know you're planting seeds, and to the extent that God is working in their lives, then once they get to know Him, He can probably take care of Himself without me.
Julie?
I keep hearing the word challenge. Everyone's saying challenge. I would say being an artist who is also a Christian and trying to integrate your faith into that the word challenge is the word I would capital C. for whatever reason, I'm sure you noticed that Christian art is very separate usually from secular art, and oftentimes artists will hide their faith in a sort of cryptic way so that they can still access people, or to not be labeled as Christian art because it's not, I have to choose my words carefully. It's maybe not what they feel like they want to be doing or what they want to be making. So integrating my faith has been a very surprising one in this journey. I thought when I first started, and I still do, integrating it obviously into lyrical content without alienating people. That's a game that is somewhat tiring to try and play, but it's fun at the same time. Also, we're on the road a lot, meeting people, and so, and usually in bars, so I will meet a lot of people that will start talking to me randomly about usually their hate for the church, so there's always a conversation there. Trying to care for people that are in that situation so that I don't alienate them, but also trying to weave some truth into it because there's a lot of hate for the church in our generation. Also, we have the ability to build relationship with people that we don't see all the time on the road, and that's been a lovely process, slow. You know, when you're in the same town as someone, you can hang out a lot. But when you don't see someone for 3 or 4 months, you develop this very unique relationship with them and having those challenging conversations. Usually, almost always, people are anti-Christian, so we've had a lot of those conversations. And they end abruptly and awkwardly, but that's okay. And I suppose the biggest challenge, other than what I just said, the having to tiptoe around, is also part of being a performer is you have to have a certain form of confidence in your ability to create. And in the artistic industry, it seems that the more confidence or drive you have, and the more ambition you have, the more successful you become. It's hard to turn that off and separate yourself from that. It's very easy to get sucked into wanting to rise to the top or be, for someone to give you notoriety, to be justified in your career choice, because it's not an easy one. And it's a black place to be, ambition. So it's a hard balance.
Just a reminder that you guys can submit questions, so if you write any down, Johanna, just stick it, wave it in the air, and she'll come around and collect those. So we'll just ask maybe one more and then start to get questions from you. So, and they can be for individuals or for the whole group, but yeah, she'll collect them for you. So, and we don't, we'll probably only have time to hear from a couple of you on this one, but are there any guiding principles, questions, or even lessons, hard ones or encouraging ones that you feel like really shape your approach to your work? Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, go. You want to answer?
Yeah, I'd love to. Since I was the last one to answer, the first one. One thing that very early on in our decision to do this musical project, a friend of mine said to me, Julie, it may be that God is you're doing this project not for the end that you have in mind, and that God has something else in mind for you. And I think as I've been thinking about vocation, what I want to encourage you all is that to some degree, I can't remember who said it was listening is, or maybe that was a quote.
Yep.
That vocation is listening to God. I think our generation gets super obsessed with like, what's my calling, because I'm not happy or I'm not seeking God and I need to change my vocation or it's not right. And I do think that there is some truth to that the vocation that God, well, first of all, God can find you in any area of life. But I think there's some truth in choosing something that fits more with the way that God makes you. The thing that I've learned is that in choosing to be a musician, yeah, I've chosen something that works really well for me and I feel like God has called me to. But actually, what's more important is that I saved my marriage. I've honored my husband and helped him to reach his dreams, and what has come out of my decision to listen to God actually has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the people that we've met. It has to do with where I am right now and what I'm doing. And so I want to encourage you in your thinking of your vocation that it does have to do with you, but it mostly has to do with other people.
Great. Yeah, guiding lesson.
I got one. So, John, Jesus says basically that when he speaks about the people that are following, he says, Father, those that you have given to me. He says it several times. Those that you have given to me. So it's an interesting reality that somehow God the Father gave the followers that Jesus had to Jesus. You've got to wrestle with that. Okay, so my guiding principle is what I call the law of permission, sort of taking a scriptural principle and putting it into words that aren't directly Christian, right? So when we sell, and this can apply both anytime you're persuading anyone, because you're doing it, we're all doing it, we're doing it all the time, which movie you want to go to, what you want to eat, what show to watch, right? How early or late you leave for an appointment when that person wants to leave earlier or later than you, right? We're all persuading. So the law of permission, it says, you must permit me to proceed. If you do not, I will not. Okay? So it requires permission, it requires engagement of another person or another group of people, and if they're not permitting, we're not moving forward. But then there's a second part, and without this second part, I really don't think this is kingdom. And that is, the more that we know you, the more that there's a bond or a connection or trust built with that person or that group, the more we have a responsibility to lean in, right? So you see your brother, sister, loved one doing something stupid, right? Or they see you doing something stupid, right? Let's make it the first way, right? Then it's your responsibility to say something. It would be irresponsible to not say something in that case. So for me, all of our selling, which hopefully makes us dramatically different than most salespeople, is founded on this reality that you must give us permission. If you don't, we don't proceed. The more we build a rapport with you, the more we're going to lean in and look for that. And that's a discovery process. So that's our guiding approach. And I really try to live my whole life that way. It's kind of a good idea, I think. So.
Very nice.
I think like using your job description as like a platform to jump off of. I had the chance to do the Peace Corps, and the whole model that you're trained in there is you go into the community and you listen for the needs, and you don't bring what you assume the needs to be there. You listen for the needs. And Peace Corps isn't a religious organization, obviously, but I think you can take that to kingdom level too. Use your job description wherever you are, and clearly it doesn't have to be a typical ministry situation to be a place where you listen to the needs and then you ask, what can I do about them? Me, Emily, in this position, what can I do? And I think that's driven me. My teaching before Peace Corps, I would say, is night and different from after Peace Corps because it taught me to really open my eyes to the needs around me and attack them in different ways with God's help. So I think that's what I would say that's guided me, at least recently. Like, use your job description as a starting place and then just ask, what are the needs? What can I do here?
Anyone else have something for that one?
I would just say, don't let whatever you find yourself doing, and more than likely, the jobs that you're going to be doing or the vocations you're going to be doing at your stage in your life are going to be a first step, probably not your last place that you land. So don't let yourself, and don't put yourself in a box. Don't be defined by your job. Don't take your life from it so much. Find your life in God. Because no matter where you are, if you're seeking God's will, He's going to be able to use you in the position that you're in. And it may be, as we're hearing about helping in relationships, that you're doing one-on-one ministry, and you may not realize how powerful that is. It may be that you're helping a community or a group, like Peace Corps does for needs. But again, listen to discern what that is, and really be open. The other thing I would say is, early in your walk, be very conscious about how much you get pulled into your job. Don't be grabbing silly putty and trying to disentangle yourself. And why I say that is, you're going to need time to take care of yourself, and you're going to need time to have space to maintain the relationships. So for example, if you have a partner, a friend, a husband or a wife, or a parent, whomever you're in relationship with, and they say to you, you seem to be spending all your time at your job, that might not be their way of saying you're spending too much time at your job. That's their way of saying, I don't feel I have enough of your time in the relationship anymore. So be very cognizant of the relationships that you're in and value them.
Maybe for Dr. Miguel, if you want to start with this one, how would you describe the difference between a job and a vocation? Maybe particularly with this audience in mind, where they're just in maybe their first job or really in that early stage, and how would you describe the difference between a job and a vocation?
For myself, I look at vocation as like a true calling where God really wants you, or you as a person that is going in life. My first one was automotive, and that really was a calling of mine for that period in life I had. And it was about an 8-year career I had at a dealership as a mechanic. I loved it. It was great. I didn't leave because I had any disdain or negative feelings there. And the same with being law enforcement. It was a calling that kind of transitioned my life, I think, the more I grew with Christ. And those things can change over time. A job I look at is, I'm like trying to get a job for my wife at Sun Country so we can have flight benefits. That's kind of how I look at it, but your vocation really is tied to your love that you have, that God has created, your desires. And never think of your desires that you have as being minimal, because if you're passionate about that, you'll be successful.
And yet every job, or every vocation, I should say, and again, in my opinion, there shouldn't be much of a difference between those two, ideally, except for perhaps temporary things. But every vocation has their bad things. Not everything is more about being a doctor, being a police officer, or whatever. There are routines, and there are things that we don't like, they are not great about the job one has to do. That doesn't mean that they are less spiritual or less important, or it's just part of the one we do. I think the concept of working hard is in the Bible, and yet don't put your job at the center of your life, or really God has to be at the center. So I hope there is no much of a difference. If there is a big difference, I will question, are you in the right place? I honestly will ask the question, what am I doing here? If I don't feel what I'm doing is the place where I can be the best I can be, as it was quoted at the beginning, to the deepest need. And for all of us, it will be different. Okay, there are many needs in the world, so there are vocations for everybody. But I think you've got to wonder if this is God maybe wrestling to lead you in a different direction.
There's a theme in a couple of the questions here. Was there a moment that any of you can remember where it's sort of, you knew this was it? Like this was the vocation for you, this where everything was in line and you had sort of that affirmation where you really felt that life-giving moment?
Aha moment, it happens, there are confirmations. I think we could tell stories. I have a lot of stories. Coming from this country, I'm not from Duluth, as you may have already noticed. But those are great things, confirmations that are awesome because you feel like God is moving, there is clearly a God thing here, and those are great. Yet, I think there is a homework that one needs to do. I believe the finding your spot, the finding your piece of the pie, the finding the vocation is in you. The answer is not outside of you, is in you. I believe that number one ingredient is to be close to God. Okay, that's basic. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that, but I think it's very fundamental. If we want to be in the right, to do the right thing on earth, you need to be close to God. But if you are close to God, then there's a few exercises you need to go through, in my opinion, that are really key, and that's your homework, okay, before you can expect aha moments. And one of them is, number one, find out what is that inner seed, or that deepest desire that God has planted in you. And this is based on some of my compatriots and Ignatius of Loyola. There is an inner seed. There is a book called The Inner Campus, which is very much talks about this exercise of going deep in yourself to find out what is that passion, what is that something godly that is at the core of my being. I'm afraid many of us, or many people have not found that, haven't done the exercise of going deep to see what is that God created me for. What am I good about? And that's a God thing. But the answer is not in something you're going to read, it's in you. Good to do that inner journey with Jesus. to the inner of your core. Number two, I think you need to ask the question, honest question with humility, meaning it's not arrogance, but what are you good at? Your gift. Everybody has gifts. And humility is really being aware of what you're good at and what you're not good at. But identify that, the parable of the talents and so many other things. We want to know, what am I good at? And sometimes other people have to tell us. Number three, I think, is, what brings me joy, what things give me energy. It's one other element that really may help you find that thing that you are meant to be. And then number fourth, I would say, is do a personality and a temperament. You want to be a doctor, there's a big difference between a radiologist or a pathologist who spend most of the day by themselves in a room, doing very important things, but are not talking to people so much, or being a primary care doctor in a clinic, but that's all you have to do. So your personality, your temperament, take the Myers-Briggs, do that. They are not very personality than others, they are just different. And finally, sorry for talking so long, is figure out where do you feel the brokenness of the world heaviest in your heart? What are the things around you that bother you the most? In terms of good bother, like, oh my goodness, there's such an injustice. I wish we could change that. That may be another piece of information that comes into play into you finding out what is your vocation or your calling. So be close to God, number one. Number two, know your gifts and abilities. Number three, what gives you joy and desire and energy? Number four, know your personality. Do the testing. And number five is going to be what things are the broken world that you're in really disturb you the most and move you to action. Sorry to give you those. I will take some.
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding. I completely concur, and that is awesome. I just want to add to that. You're awesome that you're already here doing that, because you're asked, it will be given to you, seek and you will find. And that's a way of kingdom living. And so that you're seeking to line up your lives with what you're feeling God calling you to is awesome. So just remember three things about yourself. And one is that you do have your gifts and talents, you have your wirings, this is who God created you. The other thing, that we live in this broken, fallen world, and some of our ideas, we think they may be from God, but some of the things that we have become in this broken life are what Satan has tempted us or tricked us into. And so the seeking and finding, do that through the Holy Spirit, because that is where God will be leading you to. The Holy Spirit is making us who we're going to become in eternity. And so that you're on this journey right away, seeking to be on that path is awesome. So do that prayerfully, and do that within a group where you can discern, is this the Spirit talking to me? Is this God? Seek some outside confirmation from those who are also living kingdom lives.
Can I answer the question?
Yeah.
I feel like, can you ask the question one more time?
Yeah, what was it? When did you know that, like, the aha moment, like, this is it, this is my vocation, what I'm supposed to do?
My family is, we have this problem where we start doing something and it goes well and we're really excited about it. And then when something goes wrong, or like it's not fitting right, we just complain and we think about all the ways, like, oh, I wish I could be, I wish I was here, and I think to some degree it's like a generational thing. I don't know if you guys have experienced that. Like, I wish I was in a different city, or I wish I had this job, or I wish whatever it is. I think that God has really shown me the importance of my vocation through the failings that I've had and the challenges that I've gone through. This last spring, we went through like a record cycle. We made a record and we put it out and we publicized it and things like that. I mentioned ambition being really black. I really failed at that. I dug myself real deep, and God seriously dug me out so hard from that. And my first initial thought was like, I need to quit this. Like, I've run into this challenge. It's too hard. I failed at it. I shouldn't be doing it. And then through the course of a very gentle month or so of quiet, I realized that God was just changing my perspective of my vocation. And I also think it's important when you make the choice to do something, to go for it wholeheartedly and be listening for God to to redefine it if necessary, but also remembering that if it's something good, Satan will attack it hard. And so I think like that's my little ha-ha to Satan. Like, sure, if you're gonna attack me, then I'll know it's something good, because the harder he strikes, the harder I know I need to keep pursuing with this different perspective so it doesn't happen again.
Well, I'm going to ask the final question since we're having each of you answer. And you might have hit on some of this already, so, but what advice can you give these people here? What advice can you give young people trying to identify this idea of vocation and calling? Again, some of you already hit on it, but we'd love to hear just in your closing remarks what you might have to offer the group in any order. Whoever's ready.
Say like pursue opportunities. You got to do your part, right? But then watch for the open doors, because sometimes more than an aha moment, it's an open door, and sometimes you only get there if you pursue things and you take risks and you're willing to maybe give up a higher salary for something with meaning. But taking risks and putting yourself out there and then watching for those open doors would be, I think, a way that the Holy Spirit can talk to you.
I would probably say really to focus on your relationship with Christ. To be able to have that communication with Christ is amazing, to interpret this life that we live in this world. And also your friends around you. They can see insight that you don't have, and really just kind of follow your heart's desires. You know, God put that there, and it can take you places that you can never imagine.
I want to echo that as well. The mystery of God coming in the form of a man. The mystery of God's Spirit living inside of you. That's crazy. Put those two realities that you can't have an intellectual assent to in just a moment into practice when you do whatever you're doing. Later on in the passage about work that endures to eternal life, that asked Jesus, what is the work? And he said, believe in the one that he has sent. Believe in Jesus. The difference between believing in Jesus and taking that into what you do and not is sometimes so close, and it seems like, oh yeah, I'm on the path with God. Oh yeah, God led me into this. No, there's no time that you go into coast mode, right? You're green, is a sales phrase. You're green and growing, or you're ripe and rotten. There's no in between. Jesus talks like this when he talks about how you enter the kingdom of God. He said, you must be born again. You must be born of water and spirit. Your righteousness must exceed that of the Pharisees. He says, you could do all these miracles and then I don't go away from you. I don't know you. The way we enter is an active process. It engages you. It presses in on you and me every day, every moment. And so the difference between you going about your business, which is so practical, and I said before, you have to hold up the list of things of doing Myers-Briggs. You have to hold that up. There has to be a deeply practical aspect to engaging in what it is God's calling you to do. There has to be this communion, and it's so easy to drop out of it. And it's so easy to look like you're doing it, and you're faking it. And God is not faked out. He's not faked out by that stuff. He's not. He does not get faked out. And he wants so desperately to reveal the love that he is pouring into your life, into the world that you come in contact with, that no one else can do except you, no matter what you are doing, no matter what you are responding to, that if you have the Christ life in you and flowing out of you, you have an opportunity that is like none other. And literally, Jesus is up in heaven, and he is just showering down excitement over every time you are taking a step to listen to him, on which the Son of Man will give you. For on him, God the Father has set his seal of approval. Jesus wants to give it to you. He wants to give it to me. We have a choice. Your choice is either take it or go your own way. Whatever you do, I almost think even, pushing the limit here a little bit, so take it with a grain of salt. In fact, a guy in the audience once said to me here, take the meat and spit out the bones. Remember that saying? Right? So if this doesn't work for you, fine. But I think God almost doesn't even care what you do, as long as you do it with Him. It's a little risky, right? So take it lightly. But like that's how much He is interested in the engagement with Him. And if you're having real engagement, then you'll have good behavior. You'll have the kind of behavior that looks like the cross. So that's my encouragement to myself, frankly, first, regardless of you here, but to you as well.
Don't worry about money, and honor your parents, because they just want you to be safe and happy, but don't worry about money.
Agree with everything said, obviously, powerful stuff. Also want to emphasize the fact that, this can be anxiety producing. Oh my goodness, am I taking the right train? Am I the right, what about if I make the wrong decision? Ultimately, you've got to trust God. I think I agree that vocation is a dynamic process. You may be here now, you may be here in 10 years, and that may be a different place, and that's okay. It's not like, oh my God, there's that thing that if I miss it. So as live the here and now. Sometimes we tend to want to live in the future when we should be here and now, in the present, and enjoy today. Really get close to God, and don't go weary in anxiety, but just do the right things. Do your homework, and at the same time trustful, because God wants to guide you and He wants to use you. I think He gives abilities so that if we are available, the ability with availability results in great things. And I think that's what He wants for you.
When I was headed off to the service in basic training, I had some visions of what it was, but my father, who was a Vietnam vet, to me said, I'm going to give you a piece of advice, and he said, don't be afraid to clean the toilets. And what he meant by that was, you're going to have to do that as part of the basic training. And your drill sergeants will watch you, and they're going to watch whether you're joyful or not joyful. And I thought that was funny at the time, and I laughed, but it's something that as I look back at, in a kingdom way, what can that mean? I say, don't be afraid to clean the toilets, and I say it for two reasons. And the first is, don't think of any job as beneath yourself, or getting dirty with people is a bad thing. And the first piece is, one, it puts you in a relationship in a way that even if you're doing hard jobs, that you can build a bond in a relationship over. The other is, if you think of yourself as somebody who I don't clean toilets, you're already setting up a judgment in the hierarchy of how you value yourself versus others. So with that, I just say, don't be afraid to clean the toilets.
That's a great way to end. To personally thank them and stay around for a little bit. We're going to have another one of these in November, another panel with different subject. We're looking at how do we integrate justice into our everyday lives, so we'd encourage all of you to come back for that as well. And again, there's information about Resanate at the back. There's a little more food in the back, but again, thank you guys so much for giving your time. We've been corresponding for over a month about this, and they've set aside their time and really shared a lot of wonderful things today. So join me in thanking them, and then enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon.
Thank you.